Okay, picking up where we left off on page 540, we're talking about garbage collection. So this is technical, but behind the scenes, what happens is the Java runtime keeps track of every object that got created. So if you create an object and then throw it away, or it comes out of scope, it needs to be destroyed. And so the way it does it, it keeps what's called a link count, a reference count. In other words, the employee object has got 3 things pointing to it, and as long as it's got 3 things, we're okay. But if you delete one, delete one, delete one, and then when you finally get to that reference count of 0, then it's going to really delete things. Now, you don't get to control this. This is just behind the scenes. So when you create an employee object, when you get to the end of the application, it's like in this particular case. So let's just do like an if statement here. All right. So if I go here and say, if I don't know, whatever, if well, doggone, I guess I have to have something in here. So int kumquat is equal to 12. Cool. And then I say if kumquat is equal to 12. And then inside this curly brace, I create me an employee object. If 2 is equal to new employee. Actually, that's not going to work because I didn't do it right. Let's do it this way. Okay. The life of this guy. What did I do wrong? Oh, imp3 then. Sorry. Okay, cool. The life of this guy lives between this semicolon and, this curly brace and that curly brace. When I get down to the bottom, I no longer have imp3, but the system is allocated memory for it. It went out and allocated memory and built me an employee object, but now it needs to know that I'm no longer needing that thing. And so that's what garbage collection does. When it came out of scope, which is like line 46, it is no longer in scope. It is eligible for being destroyed. And the reason why it wants to destroy these things is to free up memory so you can do other things. Okay? So that's what garbage collection is all about. I'm trying to remove unneeded, unused objects that are currently taking up our precious RAM and return it to the system so that we can use that RAM for something else. That's what it's all about. Now, you don't really have any control over when this occurs, okay? But one of the things you can do is you can say, when it does occur, I want you to do some tidying up. So in our particular case, we don't really have a good example. But let's just assume that this employee class, just bear with me, guys. Let's just assume that we opened a file and then we were reading a file. When this thing goes out of scope, I want you to automatically close the file, okay? So I would create a method here called finalize, okay? So public void finalize, like this. And then put something in here that says whatever tying up loose ends, whatever tying up loose ends you need to do, that's what you're going to do here. Now, in our particular case, we don't have any. But just pretend like that we were opening on a file or we allocated a huge chunk of memory for doing graphics. And then when this thing falls out of scope, instead of just destroying this copy of the employee, I need to do some tidying up. I need to close the file or release some other memory. That's what the finalize is for. Okay, kind of makes sense? Okay, on page 542, they talk about collaboration on section 811. I'm going to skip that. And let's just go to 512 where you have the common errors to avoid. That's always good stuff. I'm not going to read them. You can read them on your own. Okay, we have reached the end of this chapter, and I'll see you guys again in the next chapter.